Hey guys, welcome into another episode of From the Wing. I'm Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. We are on the precipice of free agency. We are on the precipice of some other important dates. Pelicans having to decide if they're going to pick up options on a couple players. They got some guarantees. We should know what this roster is going to look like, going into next season, probably in the next week, 10 days. Maybe it drags out longer than that, but we're going to get a pretty clear picture of what this team is going to be exactly headed into next season soon. Then it's summer league, and then it's, we just kind of chill until training camp in September. How are you enjoying this post-draft time? Did you enjoy the part of the offseason where there's videos of Zion going out to different schools in the New Orleans area and dunking and wowing the crowd?
We said, like, what did we say was going to happen? Like the counter propaganda is now out there. Like, enjoy it, read into it. The bunch of, like, it doesn't take much. Like, it's amazing how, like, your average fan will, like, hear the rumored conversation, get scared. He does a dunk, and now it's like, see, I know they never offered him. That was all lies. The media made it up. Big media, Christian Clark over here, talking about conversations being had. It's all a conspiracy. He wants to be here. He's locked in. Look,
my sources are telling me Zion drove to the Pelicans practice facility and picked up a smoothie and said, hello, everyone. He's all in now. I'm convinced. That was just a joke, by the way. My sources were not really telling me that.
Hey, at least it was a smoothie. All the conversation around him is still relevant. All of the bought in, whatever. Like, I heard a bunch of that stuff too, that like, oh, he's as locked in as he's ever. Look, the question is not, can he do an offseason program? We learned last year he can do an offseason program and come in good shape. The question is, when he does get hurt, when he gets nicked up, is his brain going to go to hell? Is he going to start eating and fall out of the ability to come back? And like, that's the conundrum. Like,
yeah, how will you respond to adversity?
It's the professionalism in the face of adversity. Can he maintain it? All that stuff's still real.
Yeah, and the question, even like at this point, isn't does he want to be in New Orleans? I mean, it seems like he clearly does at this point. That's not really a question mark anymore. I think it was early in the career, especially when, maybe some folks around him had more influence, but every indication is that he wants to be here. The question is now, okay, well, I guess we're at the point in the offseason where the Pelicans are going to, like, he's clearly going to be back next year. But the question is just, hey, how does he respond when things get difficult, basically?
Yeah. So that question remains. I think, obviously we heard some rumors. We bandied about the idea of like a new construction of this team, but overall, I think it was going to be tough to see a different version of this team. We've talked about that as well. So now you're going to see this team run back. You're looking for development from the guys that you have. You still have a really deep roster in terms of playable talent, but there's still like a small difference between having a roster that has a lot of stuff on it that other people want and having a roster that has a lot of stuff that fits together. And there's some duplicative skills. There's some duplicative roles, some misconceptions about players just based on like, I think that there needs to be like, we kind of need to forget last season when it comes to judging how basically everybody other than Brandon played, because you didn't see enough of Zion for it to matter. Like, we know his deal. His deal's been the same for a couple of years now. If he plays, he's a Hall of Famer. Great. All of the role players and CJ, the way they've been talked about since the season ended, none of them were supposed to be playing the roles that they did. Like, none of them were supposed to be put in the positions they did. Naji was not supposed to be dependent on to be like your two guard scoring 16 a night for a run there. And he was. And it's just like, it's warped kind of people's perspective on like what the intention for CJ is, who Naji is on this team, what Dyson is. It's very weird, the conversations people are having about those guys. And I think last year, just like, remember, everyone died. Like, we lost Jose for half the season. You don't have a lot of ball handling behind that. Dyson had a rough offensive stretch. Dyson's defense is still great. Naji costs you nothing. And he's just like a Swiss Army knife of, I can do a little bit of everything. You can kind of plug me in and fix your problems. So anyway, all that being said,
it's just going to be funny if the Pelicans, after all that, are just running it back minus Aaron Nelson, which it's possible. It's possible at this
Oh,
point.
what an indictment that would, like, what happens what if they win like 54, 55 games with just Aaron Nelson gone?
I'm not even saying like this is the wrong thing to do, but it would just be hilarious after Griff said at the exit interviews, I don't want the conversation to be about the medical team. And then the only change you make in the offseason is just getting rid of the guy who's in charge of the medical team and bringing all the same players back. I mean, that could be the best way to move forward too. I mean, I can't say that it's not. It would just be hilarious after he made that comment publicly.
And I mean, we talked about it. Like, he was clearly just trying to downplay that conversation because there was more to what they needed to do in the offseason. Like, we do need commitment from Zion. We do need guys to stay here in the offseason. We do need, if JV is going to be here, him to not go play in a European league and put, 30 games on his body. You still had other stuff. Like, obviously they've made coaching changes, Borrego's coming in, all those things. But at the same time, like, it's hilarious. Like,
yeah, and I should have noted they did make significant changes to the coaching staff, and it appears like they've got more coaching talent in the room too. So that shouldn't be dismissed or anything. I probably should have mentioned that too.
And we had some players on a little Spaces the other night, and one of the comments that came out of the Spaces is Borrego's an offensive wizard. Love hearing that.
Oh, I only caught the very tail end and some snippets. Who said the Borrego is an offensive wizard?
CJ called him an offensive wizard.
Oh, wow. I did hear the snippet of the fellow who asked CJ why he is playing with a flat top in 2023.
See, that's what Spaces is really for. Shout out to Larry Nance, though. If there is not a person in the NBA that understands direct fan engagement more than Larry Nance. Like, he literally, he is us. He's going to do a Red Beans and Rice Day. RB&R, it's coming to a theater near you sometime soon. Like, he knows how to get to us. He really does know how to get to us. We had the whole thing with our buddy last year, our buddy Dave getting pulled into a game, getting a jersey and all that stuff. Like, it's pretty remarkable that he came in so fast and has like slid in here and gotten to ingratiate himself so easily. Obviously Trey and CJ were in the Spaces too. And they made fun of each other and gave each other shit. And it was great. But yeah, so some changes, but it will still be funny if like the leading sentiment was like, let's get the pressure off the medical staff decision. Okay, the leader of the medical staff is now gone. All right, cool. 55 games. Let's do it. 55 wins. Let's just do it now.
And they could. It's
possible. But it was also possible if he was still here. Like, part of this, like, he could have been here and they could have just been healthy. He's not the one making them turn their ankles and stuff out on the court. So,
I mean, I think a lot of things could have been handled better. At the same time, from my understanding, Aaron Nelson did not drive over to Zion's house between his second and third seasons and hit his foot with the right hammer and then make him eat a bunch of junk food. So that was not what happened there.
Yeah. Like cartoon hammer, like the Acme hammer, like the Wile E. Coyote, just slammed him. But so transitioning a little bit, we're getting to the, we have some decision deadlines tomorrow. So tomorrow is an NBA deadline for people's options to get picked up and whatnot. And we've heard our first like true free agency and trade rumors of the NBA offseason. Like, the first wave of them has come through. Pelicans mentioned a little bit. A lot of guys seemingly, like, I feel like there's a lot of guys that I kind of know their destination or have an instinct about their destination. And I got to tell you, we've been talking about the Pelicans needing to do potentially something at center, and it's murky out there. It's dark.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the big question. What are the Pelicans going to do at center? Will it be a small move like Willy Hernangomez is moving on, and then you just add like a different person to provide depth there? Will it be a bigger move like a Jonas Valanciunas trade? Jonas has got 1 year left in the deal, about $15 million. There just aren't many, like salary pieces the Pelicans have besides him where they can send something out and then, get something significant back. So we're sitting down to talk on Wednesday, a little before noon, on by Thursday at 4 p.m., the Pelicans are going to have to decide on a couple of team options for players. Willy Hernangomez, $2.6 million. I would be surprised if the team picks this up. Naji Marshall at $1.9 million. I believe the team will pick this one up. And then Herb Jones at $1.8 million. I'm expecting Herb Jones to be a Pelican next season. I think the question is, do they want to pick the team option up at 1.8, which will make him a restricted free agent next summer, and they can match anything he gets? Or are the Pelicans just going to give Herb a new deal this summer? They can give him a 4-year deal. I think the max is something a little north of $50 million. I think those are the two possible outcomes for Herb. Just pick the 1.8 up, make him a restricted free agent, or they negotiate a new 4-year deal, worth a little north of 50 mil.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'd looked at these before you read out your opinions, that would have been my guesses. The only debate with Billy there is like, what sort of depth do you have left at center if you're not going to do anything with Jax, which I think we've been a little bit apart on Jax as a Pelican for a while now. So, you're left with just Jonas, really. Jonas and Larry are your bigs, period. Like, that's kind of it. So I do wonder about that for like its cheap depth, but Billy was less happy last season than the year prior. Was not so much team good vibes, team all positive vibes from him last year. So,
and honestly, I can understand it from his perspective too, because he just had this incredible summer. It's like, I was the MVP of Eurobasket and I'm just not going to come back and play. And honestly, I understand, why he wasn't a part of the Pelicans rotation. I think the international game is just much different than the NBA, especially for bigs and how they're asked to move in space. But I understand why he felt the way he felt. And I mean, if I was advising him, I'd be like, look, we'd love to have you back, but, if you want to go back. But like, I don't know, maybe seek an opportunity elsewhere, because it's probably just not going to happen for you here with this coach.
You need to find a team that doesn't care that you can't defend. Like, that's kind of it. Like, you have to go somewhere where there is less pressure on the front court to defend. He would be interesting, he'd be interesting in some different roles around the league, but like, you'd have to find him like a place like Denver or somewhere where like there's more scheme help. Like, he could play with Aaron Gordon and get protected and have some like staggered minutes where maybe his offense gets to speak for him a little bit. He'd have to find something like that, because he is a polished, like decently polished role guy, mostly has a nice game, like 10 feet into the basket, has good footwork, all that stuff. Like, he can get you like 15 and 10 if you play him 25 minutes. He's just also going to give up 25 on the other end. And we know that's who he is. That hasn't changed for years. And as smiley and happy as he is, that the best opportunity for him probably is somewhere else. I'd be content to have him back if he wants to be back at the number that it is. Like, it's a very, very tiny number. But yeah, his best opportunity is clearly somewhere else.
What do you think about the possibility and the potential ramifications of giving Herb that deal, this summer, as opposed to going into next summer and making him a restricted free agent and playing that game?
So I mean, from a pure asset standpoint, if you're just looking at Herb in a vacuum, giving him this deal, especially if you think he'll take it, this would bring him in at a number that, compared to the wings in the league, like, it's a great number. Like, essentially 13.5 per year. That's an incredible number for him. That's you still have meat on the bone there in terms of what he can achieve versus what's happening to your cap sheet. And I do wonder, like, Herb is a different kind of dude. Like, he may just take that money and be content with that. I don't know. So I think it's, on an individual basis, it would be smart to offer it to him. I do, however, wonder if by doing that, does that limit what your possibilities are for our big question, the center position? Because if you do have him, if you extend him now and he signs that deal, then it's, at least January 15th. So you're kind of kicking the can down the road in terms of when you could do anything with him. And while I know a lot of fans don't want to hear this, you're not going to be living in a Pelicans world where Trey, Herb, like Dyson, Jonas, like there's if a center on this team is making $20 million or more for the next couple of years, you extend Herb, and then Trey's extension is coming, and Trey's number is going to be gargantuan. I would say that Trey is probably more valuable than a DeAndre Hunter, right? DeAndre Hunter got a contract worth 23 a year.
Yeah.
With the max growing like it's growing right now, like it would not be a shock if Trey got like 28. And if that's the case, like you're going to be staring at being like a second apron team in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I know. So Trey Murphy's 2 years into his rookie deal. He's got 2 more years left on the deal. I know the Pelicans are already conscientious of, okay, his money is going to kick in, 3 seasons from now. That's going to be a big number. Like I know they're conscientious about taking on any long-term money that goes longer than 2 years. I think that's part of the consideration with Jarrett Allen, for example. He's got 3 years left on the deal. I think it's something like $20 million each year.
2020.
Yeah. Okay. Even 2020.
Yeah.
I know that, something they thought about as well. You'd have to pay him $20 million 3 seasons from now. That's when Trey's money is going to kick in. That's something they're at least being mindful of. So I think that's something to watch. If like they're getting back any somewhat significant piece, how long is that guy under contract for? And I would bet that he's not going to be under contract for more than 2 seasons. I would bet.
Yeah, this is something for us and our fan base to like become cognizant of now. Like I know John Collins was a historically mismanaged asset of a player for our lifetime. The new CBA changes, which we've talked about the penalties for being a second apron team. I've seen the tweets about, cheap owners are going to be cheap owners and the second apron is just going to be the way to justify not spending money in the new world, blah, blah, blah. The problem is the second apron is actually a real justification now. It is a hardcore removal of your ability to be mobile with your team. So people are not going to come close to it. We just saw John Collins dealt for scraps just to make sure that they got their exception back and weren't a second apron team. That's the way to think about this right now. And the Pelicans are staring down a very, very clear future of that possibility. And it's not that far away. It's only a couple of years away because that money is coming for some of these younger guys. From a standpoint of Herb, you can't let Herb get to restricted free agency. You can't. Like from an asset standpoint, if he's not going to be moved in a deal, then you can't let him get there because if you do, that number is going to be way, way more than 13. It's going to end up being 20 plus. If you just look at like
it is. Do we know that for sure? What if he shoots 29% from 3 next year? It will.
Dude, I'm looking. I went and looked through like average salary for wings right now, and when you get into the 15 to 20 range, you think about the growth of the cap over the next couple of years. It will not shock me if he has the potential to be a defensive player of the year candidate. He is going to be on the all defense team every single year. And he does things. He's able to do a little bit of things where he's not just like a stick in the mud on the offensive side. Yeah, you need his shot to be there because they're going to leave him open, but he can initiate some offense. Yeah. He's a good cutter. Like he's a good cutter. No, he's not just a cutter. Like he's a good cutter, especially on the baseline. When they fall asleep, like he's where he needs to be. I just think there's enough value in him and the contract value cap growth. It just won't shock me if his number gets to 20 a year. So there's him and then there's him, the trade asset. To me, you either trade him now or you give him his, whatever max you can offer him now to keep him out of a restricted free agency. Cause I could just see it getting kind of dumb because it only takes one team and he's an asset. He is.
Look, I think that's fair. The free agent center market is pretty thin when you look at realistic options. Brook Lopez, not going to come here, right? And there's not enough money to pay him anyway. Nikola Vucevic sounds like he's going back to Chicago. Jakob Poeltl sounds like he's going back to Toronto. I would like Poeltl if it was realistic at all. It's not. They don't have enough money. After that, you get into Mason Plumlee. You get into Dwight Powell. You get into Drew Eubanks. There is a drop off after that.
Yeah, it's tough out there in them streets. So it used to be you look back a few years, we used to joke that you could just you could sign a starting center off the street. Brother, this year is not that year. You are not signing anything good off the street. You can sign a backup. Sure. You could get a third body. So if Billy's got to go, you could find a warm body to be your third center. No problem. Absolutely. But yeah, Brook Lopez, rumors of Houston, probably somehow stays in Milwaukee. He just feels, he's 35. It feels like he somehow just stays in Milwaukee. I just don't believe that he's going to go to the island of misfit kids and be the grizzled vet that holds it all together in Houston. Though they do have a bunch of money to throw. There's rumors of them and Fred VanVleet as well. I think he stays in Milwaukee. I think all the bigs that are free agents are not actually free agents. And the two guys one that we've talked about every year, I'd like to congratulate Miles Turner. Miles Turner has somehow, for the first offseason ever, we haven't heard a peep. We have not heard a peep. John Collins gets traded. Miles Turner, not even out here. I mean, who's the winner here? Who is the next always been offered guy? Who's going to take that title? Who's going to take up the mantle?
From what I've been told, the Pelicans inquired about Miles Turner. I think they've inquired about a lot of guys. And my understanding is the Pacers said, we're not trading him. Apparently, it kind of sounds like Miles Turner is untouchable right now.
What a turn of events for our guy.
It's an incredible turn of events.
What a turn of that man.
He did have a very nice season last year. I got to tip my hat. He had a very nice season last year. I think it was clearly his best season as a pro. Scored one-on-one sometimes when he got the ball down low, especially against smaller players. I mean, there's some real growth. He makes sense in a Rick Carlisle offense with Halliburton. So, I mean, I can see why they want to keep him.
Can I say, though, the last thing I would have predicted last year was that he'd be like a Rick Carlisle guy. I just never imagined that looked like, based on he'd been shopped for 3 years. Rick Carlisle's there. Rick Carlisle's kind of a micromanager, kind of taskmastery coach. He's one of the last ones left in the NBA that kind of lords over your whole process as a team. And and he's had some famous run-ins with some point guards who wanted to, control the offense and run the defense and whatnot. I didn't see this happening, but yeah. So I think we jump to the Miles Turner rumor, hey, he fits now. Good number, good deal. You could swap him and JV virtually straight up. Let's do this. It's not here, folks. It is not here. And the other guy that we would probably like a lot as a fit, Wendell Carter, doesn't sound like he's going anywhere either. Because, you kind of needed the Wemby thing to happen for Orlando if you wanted one of the bigs to get out of there. They just kind of need a guard, and Orlando can be fun. There's no pressure for them to really do anything yet. So we're looking at trades. That's basically the only way this can happen. And even the trade waters. If you're serious, if you dive in and you look at who is actually being rumored to move, whose teams are in cap situations, who actually would come here and would fit the role here, and it wouldn't be outsized for what they get paid. Still not a lot of options. Still not a lot.
There's really not. I mean, I'm so curious, how creative they get here. I mean, I think just from a pure basketball standpoint, I like the Jarrett Allen fit. I mean, I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's pretty good. I mean, he is a guy who's pretty dependent on a pick and roll point guard. He's kind of a lob guy on offense, and that's not really the Pelicans offense so much. But he does defend well at the rim. Good verticality guy. I think Willie would just trust him, which is one of the most important things here. If you're going to commit real resources to a starting center, is the head coach going to trust him? But it just sounds extremely unlikely at this point. I think, maybe the Pelicans looked at it before the draft, but it doesn't sound like it's going to happen now.
Yeah, so we're talking about Jarrett Allen. Just a quick catch up for if anybody hasn't read it. Jake Fisher emptied out his first trades and free agency intel notebook on Yahoo Sports. the big connection for the Pelicans in that article was to Jarrett Allen, that a call was placed. Him and Mark Stein both kind of comment that Jonas has been made available and that Jarrett Allen was the guy that we called about. I think Jarrett Allen, like you said, it's not perfect. There's not a lot of centers in the league that are a perfect fit here, given the dynamics of the front court, which you get in Jarrett Allen if it were to happen, which I think we both feel a little dubious about that now. If it were to happen, you don't lose your rebounding. You get better defense. And realistically, when you look at the offensive utilization of the center position in our offense, there's not actually a lot of pressure there. Not as much as like in terms of the, that's the difference between him and Valanciunas. You can throw the ball down to Jonas and Jonas can get you a bucket, and that Jarrett Allen cannot do that. Jarrett Allen, you need to tee him up. But on defense, you get a guy that's really, really comfortable. If he gets put in a pick and roll situation, he can recover. He's going to give you rim defense, and you don't lose rebounding in the process. So essentially, you'd upgrade the defensive center position and slightly downgrade the offensive. I'd say more than slight if we leaned on the center position more, but we just don't. We don't feed it in this offense that way, and not a lot of teams do.
One of the ideas that our buddy Shimitu has thrown out is JV to the Spurs and get back Zach Collins. Zach Collins is under contract for one more year. Looking at it now at $7.7 million. Then he's unrestricted. He's had some nice flashes in the NBA, but he just can't stay on the court. I mean, that's kind of been his problem. He's got a season with 11 games played. He missed an entire season. Got 28 games played. He was up to 63 games played last year. I like the idea of Zach Collins if he's healthy. The games played thing scares me.
It's not scared. Like for me, I'll just throw salt at this whole thing. It's not happening. There's no way that the thing to do, the way to solve this is to get the skill fit that doesn't play basketball and just hope for the best on this team.
Well, I guess in this scenario, trade for Zach Collins, bring back Jackson Hayes, and you've got Larry. Those are your three centers.
Jackson comes back. Like again, it just all doesn't, none of that really makes sense to me. I buy that like Larry, is 25 minutes of your center position. That's the only part of that I feel like I believe. Because like as soon as Collins, we'd be repeating a lot of the same issue that we had last season. Jax did not play in games that mattered last year. That's not going to change this year. He's not going to magically find it now all of a sudden. I just don't believe that he's going to turn into a different person overnight. So
why would you believe that, man?
I mean, what evidence do I have? None, right? He's clearly self-motivated. He's not motivated by benching. He's not motivated by heading to Birmingham. Like that never happens to him. He's a self-motivated guy who's like working really hard and not just, traveling the countryside and partying it up.
Have you seen the Michael Jordan rant or I guess monologue where he's like, part of the problem in today's NBA is that these young guys get paid before they've actually had to do anything. And back in my day, you had to prove it before you got that big deal. I kind of agree with MJ's boomer take on this. It's like the money is so big for a lot of these top picks now. Like if you're a lottery guy, like you don't really have to do anything to have like an extremely comfortable life. Like you can make enough money on that first contract for like you and your kids and you're good, man. Like you can, and you can't be, I mean, I guess you can, be cut or whatever, but I mean, it's pretty much guaranteed, right? So
yeah,
I'm a little bit with MJ on this one. It's like, I mean, man, look, it's a lot for without doing anything.
We've talked about it. Like it's emblematic of the conversation around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the All-Star break. We've talked about that a couple times. Like it's scary when guy who's achieved nothing already has monster money and says, if you want me to play basketball more or harder, you need to give me more money. That's a terrifying place to be in the NBA. And that's
the only thing I'll say is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has actually accomplished things in the NBA.
But what historically what? Like he's a very, very good guard. A lot of us believe like he is one of the best guards in the NBA. He plays for a team that has had zero consequences. And like there's nothing there. He hasn't been held to anything. He just gets to go out there and have fun. And there's no consequences if they're bad. and he rests when he rests. And like, he has not faced anything yet for me, but I do believe he's that good. I'm not, call me a boomer. I'm, increase my age by a decade.
If you think he hasn't accomplished anything, let me show you Jackson Hayes' career so far.
Exactly my point. Exactly where I'm going. So if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's saying that, like, look, Jackson comes in here, he's got his Instagram model girlfriend. That's no longer a thing, happenings, things occurred there. And she's moved on with her life. But like, that's how he comes into the league. He comes into the league like he kind of looked entitled, like just in how he carried himself, just like on his Instagram. It looked like he had a great time. Just doesn't look like he worked that hard at basketball.
You guys will have to buy my book that I'll never write about this team because it won't sell enough copies to really get some stories here. But anyway, if you're listening to this podcast, you would enjoy that theoretical book.
So I agree that it's going to take some creativity, but like, it's going to take more than like, I would honestly at this point, the only thing my struggle is the way that I'd want to approach it is still something I talked about months ago. I wish they'd just add an extra body and go into, give me all the Larry Nance tweeners. Just add the JaMychal Green and whoever else, like give me all those dudes and throw the sum of them is fine as a starting center, but we don't really have the roster space to do that. But I would love it if instead of a Jax or a Billy as your third guy, that third guy is like actually someone who can play. And like, maybe it's even an undersized dude, like an undersized older guy on a 1 year, like Jeff Green or somebody bouncy that could still like block shots from time to time and can do like a little bit. There are guys like that in the league. I think like that's probably the weird way that is the most available.
How would you feel about Thomas Bryant on the minimum?
Yeah, on the minimum as one of the guys, but I think he'd firmly be the third guy. I just don't believe he's going to be anything more. But if I need three dudes to get it done, I need to keep minutes off of Larry's back. It's the regular season. Thomas Bryant can get you some stuff in the post. He can play pretty tough. Just don't expect to play him in the playoffs or in, crunch time situations or anything like that. He's not going to graduate into that stuff. But yeah, like maybe that's the way. Is just get healthy bodies that can log center minutes in the NBA, and the sum of the parts gets you there.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much everything I have on the not that exciting center free agent class, potential center free agent targets. I was at the Jordan Hawkins thing Tuesday, and it was cool. Jordan Hawkins is a pretty quiet guy. He's a CAA guy, from my understanding. He was really fired up about being here and coming into this situation in New Orleans. And probably my main takeaway was that Swin Cash was in the front row. She was like ecstatic. She is so hyped about the Jordan Hawkins pick. There is, of course, a Connecticut connection there. Yeah, big fan of the pick, Swin Cash, and I think it was a good pick too. I'm not knocking it at all, but yeah, she loving it. She was soaking it up yesterday.
Yeah, I love that for as the youngins say. I love that for her. Jordan Hawkins is going to find a way to get utilization on this team. He's going to find his way into a role the same way that he found a way to get major offense on that UConn team. He's going to open himself up for shots. They need the 3-point volume if Borrego's here and they're going to play a different style, if they are really looking for a different solution at center, it means a different style of basketball. And it means not having the 3-point conundrum that we had last year. And that equals Jordan Hawkins playing.
Yeah, these first 2 years, I'm just hoping Jordan Hawkins can give them some of what JJ Redick gave the Pels in 2019-20. And a little bit there the following season, just with that 2-man game in Zion. But like, just give me a little bit of that, come off the bench, shoot it in the 40s, like give me some crazy movement shooting. Like that's what I'm hopeful for early in his career. And I mean, that's maybe a little bit ambitious, but I honestly, I do think he is capable of that. Like he's just that good of a shooter.
Yeah. And I mean, it is really not hyperbole when we're saying that his shooting motion is so compact that he can get a squared shot off from an insanely short amount of time And you tweeted about it. It's reflected in the fact that he got to the free throw line a lot on 3-point attempts. Why is that?
He took 23 free throw attempts that were a result of him getting fouled on 3-point shots last season at Connecticut. I believe it was the most in the nation. It was a college basketball analytics stat that account tweeted out. But I love that. That a great indicator that people are terrified of you when you shoot.
Yeah. And for the conversation that's been coming about like, oh, he's a 3-point shooter like Trey. He's going to get misused. He's going to get mismanaged, blah, blah, blah. Trey's looking pretty great. And in terms of how they are as shooters, they're coming at this from the opposite ends of the spectrum. Trey is the big body that can shoot it from deep. Hawkins is the guy that runs around like crazy to create space and will shoot it off anything and anybody, doesn't care what the closeout is, doesn't need space. The dude's just a killer when it comes to getting that shot off, like all the top guys in the NBA. And he says himself, he modeled his game off of who? Ray Allen, who he comes up under the UConn shooting, all the shooting records. He comes up right under Ray Allen in most of those records for threes. And his other embodiment, Rip Hamilton, which I think if you watch any clips of him, Ray Allen and Rip Hamilton, if you fuse them together, made him a little, more on the Rip side of the body build. All we need to do is get this man a mask, and it's looks pretty familiar. So I think he's going to find a way out there. I think he's a good pick. You're going to get shooting. He's going to work his way out there. He's not similar to anybody that we've taken recently. I don't think he has a close comparison to somebody that Willy's coached. I really don't.
All right, Adam. Well, I would say it should be fun and eventful, but I don't know if it's going to be fun or eventful these next couple days here. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It just might mean it's maybe different than I expected it to be. Thank you for hopping on this Wednesday, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you guys again soon.